They wounded you. They turned their backs, walked away, and left you carrying invisible fractures, scars no one else could see, but heavy enough to nearly suffocate you in silence. They thought, it's fine. Time will erase it. They'll forget. But they were wrong, because the universe remembers. And Stoicism, the philosophy of the strong, teaches us this eternal truth. Every action has a consequence, not always immediate, not always in the form we expect, but always inevitable. The wise do not chase revenge. The wise remain still, because they know some debts are not theirs to collect. Time will do it. The universe will do it. And when justice comes, it needs no announcement. Your silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is the discipline to refuse the endless cycle of bitterness, the very cycle that would transform you into the same as those who hurt you. And in today's video, I'll reveal 7 subtle signs that karma is already at work. Quietly, invisibly, but relentlessly. Signs that the universe is not ignoring your pain, but protecting you, shifting the scales in ways you may not yet see. You were never losing. You were being defended, silently, patiently, powerfully. Sign number 1, an inner collapse. They left, they hurt you, and then they carried on as if nothing ever happened. No apology, not even a glance back, just cold indifference, as if you never existed. But what they don't know, or choose to deny, is this. Every action leaves a trace in the mind of the one who commits it. On the surface, they seem fine. They're still smiling, still living their own life, but that's just the surface. Beneath it, where no one else can see, a collapse has begun, a kind of inner collapse, silent but fierce, a fracture of the spirit. Stoicism calls it an inescapable consequence when the soul punishes itself. Seneca once wrote, "No man can live a happy life or even a supportable life without the study of wisdom." That wisdom, he believed, doesn't come from justification. It comes from the courage to face oneself. The one who hurt you may avoid you, but they cannot escape themselves. Each night when the lights go out, memory lights up, buried images return, a past embrace, a trusting gaze, a broken promise. You don't even need to be there. They still hear you in the silence of their own mind. This reckoning doesn't come loud. It comes in restless sleep, in the jolt when someone mentions your name, in moments when they try to laugh but feel hollow inside. You won't see these things, but that doesn't mean they're not real. Stoics teach us to trust what we can't see if it aligns with the laws of nature. They fear your eyes, but more than that, they fear their own eyes in the mirror, because there they see someone they no longer respect. They see a version of themselves they once thought was kind, now turned into the person who caused someone else to break. That is karma, but not the kind of karma that comes as a curse from the outside. This is inner karma, when the sentence is handed down inside their own heart. Sometimes you don't need to do anything, no reaction, no demand for justice, because the universe is already at work for you through the cracking of their own consciousness. It often arrives unannounced, like a strike of memory, a song from the past, a familiar cafe, a message they accidentally reread. Things they thought they'd forgotten become the blade of awakening. You trusted them, and they chose to turn away, but you were wounded and chose silence. That choice lifted you, not because you're better than them, but because you didn't let the wound define you. While they despise the mask, they are being eaten alive by the weight of their own mistake. Maybe they haven't faced punishment in the world, but they're punishing themselves every day with the feeling of a loss they can't name. That loss isn't you. It's the part of their conscience they abandoned when they left you behind. If you ever wonder whether justice truly exists, remember this. No one lives in peace knowing they're the reason someone else broke. That truth is the sharpest blade of all, invisible to the world but cutting slowly and deeply from within. Sign number 2, a replay of their own actions. They thought they could walk away from you without leaving a trace. No explanation, no apology, just gone, as if you never existed in their life. But what they don't know is this. The universe doesn't need you to seek revenge. It only needs a mirror. Karma doesn't punish. Karma reflects. It's not about wishing pain upon them. It's simply that nature always finishes its work, quietly but flawlessly. What they did to you, the universe will return to them. This happens not too soon, not too late, just at the precise moment they've forgotten they ever did it to someone. Then one day, when they are used by someone they trusted, when they are left behind midway through what felt like something real, when their messages go unanswered, they begin to feel something unfamiliar, but strangely familiar. They're confused. They ask themselves, why is this happening to me? And in that moment, a faint memory creeps back, the image of them ghosting you, turning away without a word, cold and detached. They're not being punished, they're experiencing themselves. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Stoicism, once wrote, "That which is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees." That's the essence of action. When someone sows harm into the human ecosystem, into trust, into someone's heart, they crack the very system they themselves live in. Evil doesn't need to circle back and bite them. It seeps into the system they rely on. When the time comes, they'll be swept into its collapse, not because someone targeted them, but because what is misaligned cannot survive for long. Hold on to your character even when you're treated cruelly, and teach yourself to let go so the universe can take over. You don't need to prove them wrong because they'll witness it themselves in their own story at a time they never saw coming. This isn't mysticism or superstition. It's the logic of reflection. Those who do wrong inevitably live in a reality where they believe others are capable of doing what they themselves have done. They can't trust in goodness because they've lost it, and so the spiral pulls them into situations that mirror how they once hurt others. What about you? You just need to stay still. No need to scream. No need to prove your worth, because your silence is the clearest mirror of all. It's a mirror they won't be able to look away from when that day comes, when they're sitting alone and they realize they've become a victim of themselves. That's when you'll know karma has begun its work. But karma doesn't stop at reflection. Sometimes it dismantles the entire system they've built their life upon. Unexpectedly, strangely, things begin to fall apart. Career, relationships, reputation. Even they don't understand why. What happens when every door begins to close, and no one but them holds the key. In the next part, you'll see wrongdoing needs no punishment because every mistake carries its own self-destruct code. We now step into sign number 3, where collapse needs no clear cause but always lands with striking precision. Sign number 3. Things start to fall apart for no apparent reason. There are collapses that come without warning, no explosion, no signs, not a single word of caution. It's just that everything starts falling apart. Opportunities vanish, relationships go cold, doors quietly close. The one who once hurt you starts losing what they once took for granted. This isn't because someone cursed them or because you wished it upon them, but because the universe is recalibrating its order. Stoicism calls it cosmos, a system of structure, principle, and an invisible balance between action and consequence. When one link veers off course, the entire machine finds a way to correct itself. No noise. No one needs to swing a sword in rage. All it takes is time and the cold precision of cause and effect. Marcus Aurelius said, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." When Marcus Aurelius said this, he wasn't denying reality. He was reminding us what we see on the surface is often an illusion. The person who hurt you might have been praised, celebrated, even successful. You might have believed they were getting away with it, but don't rush to that conclusion. What you see is just a single frame in the long sequence of consequences they'll eventually face. The surface of success is sometimes just a coat of paint covering a system already rotting from within. One day, without anyone touching it, it will collapse on its own. The most terrifying part of karma isn't immediate punishment. It's the quiet reshaping of the environment around them. They don't understand why the people closest to them start drifting away. They can't explain why their career starts crumbling, even though they're still trying. They're confused when things that once felt certain suddenly become unclear. That's no coincidence. It's the universe responding to a misaligned action that once went unchecked. Everything is connected in an inseparable web of cause and effect. When we hurt another human being, we are damaging a piece of the human ecosystem. one that operates not just through logic but also through emotion, trust, and inner values. A lie, a betrayal, a cruel remark may seem like isolated acts, but over time, they send out ripples, quiet, far-reaching, that eventually come back to destroy the very things that once nourished that person. This is like a tree that looks lush on the outside, leaves green, branches wide, cast in shadows, like nothing's wrong. But deep beneath the soil, the roots have rotted slowly, quietly, invisible to the eye. It still stands tall. People pass by and admire it. They say, "Look how strong it is." They don't know it's dying from the inside. Then one unsuspecting day, with no storm, no wind, no warning, it collapses, not because of what hit it, but because it could no longer carry the weight of its own decay. The one who hurt you is no different. They smile, they pretend, they move on as if nothing happened, but karma doesn't chase, it waits. Like the tree, they too will fall, not by your hands, but by the consequence they planted long ago. Roots of guilt, of deceit, of harm left unresolved. They thought they escaped, but the collapse always begins from within. You don't need revenge. You don't need them to admit they were wrong. The universe does that for you, and it does it the Stoic way, calmly, methodically, without emotion, but with precision. When someone causes harm and tries to carry on as if nothing happened, they've created a loose link in the order of the cosmos. Stoicism believes that the universe will always find a way to tighten what's come undone. In that unexplained unraveling, they begin to feel empty. Nothing outside has changed yet, but inside they've started to crack. This is not because you left, but because their actions have generated a force that's now pushing back, like a stone thrown into water, the ripples quietly returning to shore. You'll see, you don't need to do anything. Just stand still, watch, and stay silent. That silence is not surrender. It's a declaration that doesn't need to be spoken. I don't need to lower myself for revenge. I'm strong enough to trust in the invisible justice of the universe. When everything around them begins to break for no apparent reason, it's not chaos, it's reordering. In that very moment, you, the one who was once hurt, are stepping out of the pain and becoming a clear-eyed witness. No longer bitter, no longer waiting for justice, just standing in an unshakable silence. Sign number 4, they feel empty in the crowd. They once turned their back on you, convinced they could replace you with someone else, or maybe many others. They stepped into new relationships, made new friends, chatted, rebuilt their social circle, and yet something was missing, something they couldn't quite name. What they lost wasn't just a person, it was someone who had once shown them the deepest kind of understanding. In the middle of the crowd, they began to feel a strange sensation, loneliness that lingers even when others are around. Words started to lose meaning, conversations turned noisy, smiles felt hollow. What they were really looking for, genuineness, safety, and eyes that once listened without judgment, was no longer there. You weren't just another passing presence in their life. You were a pillar of emotional support, a mirror that made them reflect on who they really were. But they weren't awake enough to realize that when you were still there, they mistook your silence for weakness. They saw your patience as something easily replaced, and so they left as if you never truly mattered. Real value lies not in appearances, but in essence. When someone can touch the depths of your soul without needing words, that's rare, that is precious, that cannot be replaced by any crowd. The philosopher Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When they live in shallow relationships, in fleeting joys and empty compliments, their soul begins to dry like a tree planted in sand. On the surface, everything seems rosy. Emoji-filled messages, laughter-filled get-togethers, hollow compliments that play like background music in a familiar play. They think they're enjoying freedom, but it's not freedom. It's detachment without meaning. It's escape without direction. Freedom without depth is just loneliness in disguise, and loneliness, when wrapped in the spotlight, makes the soul emptier than ever. A soul that once tasted depth, real, raw, rooted connection, can never be satisfied with surface-level echoes. It will crave a sincere look, an understanding silence. It wants to see someone who doesn't turn away when it breaks down. Until they return to that kind of truth, everything else will feel like noise. Kai's story is proof. He left Amelia for someone new, someone louder, someone who smiled brighter, laughed easier. To the world, it looked like a move toward happiness, but karma doesn't always arrive with thunder. Sometimes it slips in through silence. At first, the newness thrilled him. The laughter, the attention, the surface-level ease. But slowly, in the quiet, in those in-between hours of the night, the truth returned. The new person didn't know how to hold space for his silence, didn't recognize the weight behind his "I'm just tired," didn't sense when his soul was cracking beneath his skin. Amelia had seen it all. She had understood him without needing explanations. Her presence was a shelter, the kind of safety you don't know you need until it's gone. Now Kai scrolls through old memories like a man searching for water in a desert he created. He smiles in photos, but the light behind his eyes has faded. In every passing face, he's looking not for someone louder, not for someone newer, but for that rare quiet understanding he once ran away from. Some lessons don't scream. They whisper after the damage is done. He can't put it into words. He doesn't dare go back. Pride stops him from admitting his mistake, and ego keeps him stuck in relationships that only fill the silence, but never heal the wound. That's when karma begins to work. You don't need to speak. You don't need to prove anything. Just keep moving forward, steady and silent, like a true Stoic. Stoicism doesn't teach revenge. It teaches us to become unshakable. They will feel the emptiness, not because you punish them, but because they chose to remove the light from their own life. You, the one they left behind in silence, are now walking forward with calm. Maybe you still feel the pain, but you're no longer who you used to be. You've been reborn. That rebirth is the most beautiful justice the universe could offer to those who failed to cherish a soul that once gave so sincerely. Have you ever been in Kai's place? Or are you the one who once walked away and now feels empty in a crowd? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might just be the light someone out there needs right now. Sign number 5. They realize a deep loss. Have you ever wondered, is there ever a moment in life when someone who once turned their back on you, who once hurt you, suddenly stops, looks into the space you left behind, and finally realizes they've lost something they'll never find again? That awakening doesn't come early, and it doesn't come loud. It arrives quietly on a still afternoon. It happens when they realize you're no longer there, no longer lingering in their life as someone always willing to forgive, no longer waiting, no longer trying to explain or hold on. You went silent, then slowly disappeared, not in anger, but in maturity. You didn't need to scream, "I was hurt," because you knew silence is a language deep enough to echo for a long time. It wasn't surrender, it was a choice, and in that choice you stepped back, not because you were weak, but because you had risen to a different plane. Karma doesn't always strike instantly, but it records everything. One day, when they sit in the middle of their own life, flipping through the connections they once had, your name will surface, not loud, not flashy, but different. In a world full of fakes, you were once the most genuine thing they had. They'll try to recall, why did you walk away so quietly? They'll wonder, why has no one else ever brought them the peace you once did? They'll realize the loss didn't come from you changing, but from them not being still enough to keep you. That is karma, but not in the sense of punishment, in the sense of consequence. Stoicism teaches us, don't respond with revenge, respond with a better life. That's exactly what you did by living on, growing up, healing, and walking out of the pain like a proud survivor. Your life has now become a mirror they cannot look away from. No one likes facing a mirror that reflects their own mistakes, but sometimes it's the mirror that's most necessary. When they see you happy, they're not jealous, they're regretful. When they see you successful, they're not envious. They know it could have been theirs had they not dropped it. Sometimes loss doesn't come from someone leaving. It comes from never getting the chance to return. That's the deepest kind of loss, knowing you had a chance and you let it slip away forever. The one who once underestimated you, who thought you were just another nice person who would come and go, years later realizes you weren't one of many. You were the only one. By then, you're no longer in their world. No more messages, no more connection, no more resting place to turn back to. They're lost in their own world, a world that has everything they once wanted, except you. Your new world may not be loud, may not be dazzling, but it's a world quiet enough for you to hear yourself clearly. It's a world where you choose who gets to step in, a place where you belong. No need to prove yourself, no more pain. The strange thing is, you don't need them to realize anything because that lesson isn't yours anymore. It's theirs. Your lesson is to keep walking quietly and build a life so beautiful that it becomes the greatest answer of all. They thought you would stay there waiting, but you left. They thought your silence meant agreement, but it was a polite goodbye. They thought you were weak, but in truth, you were silently resilient. Now, with everything behind your growth, the thing they once couldn't understand has become the burden of regret they now carry. A regret no one can rescue them from except themselves. Karma doesn't need you to do anything. All it asks is that you live well, live fully, live right. The rest, the universe will take care of it for you. Sign number 6, spiritual knowing. They once hurt you. They once walked away as if nothing ever mattered, and you stayed silent. No begging, no reaction, no pleading for an apology. To outsiders, maybe you looked weak, but in the deepest truth of reality, you are doing the strongest thing a person can do. You let go. You let the universe do its part. There are consequences that make no sound, that don't show up as disasters, crises, or sudden failures. Some costs are invisible because they happen inside, in the quietest, most sacred depths of the soul. That's exactly where karma strikes its deepest roots, when their soul begins to rot. No one sees it, but they feel it. An unnamed emptiness starts to seep into every moment of their life. They begin to lose connection with the things that once brought them joy. A good meal no longer feels satisfying. A sincere smile makes them suspicious. Silence terrifies them. In every glance from others, they see a shadow of abandonment. Not everyone can tell they're in pain, but they know it every single day. The one who once hurt you is now hurting themselves, not with obvious actions, but through their inability to find peace within. They doubt everything, especially themselves. They don't trust anyone's intentions. They no longer believe in love as something that lasts. With nothing solid to hold on to, they cling to toxic relationships, like a tree desperately trying to grow in rotten soil. You might still see them smiling, living, but that's not living. That's surviving. It's not loneliness that destroys a person. It's the feeling of being trapped inside your own body when everything on the outside seems fine, but inside there's a voiceless scream. That spiritual knowing, the slow erosion from within, that's where karma is at its most powerful. It doesn't strike the wallet, the reputation, or the job. It strikes the soul. When the soul has no shelter left, everything else becomes an empty shell. The one who caused you pain no longer needs your revenge, because life has handed them a mirror they can't look away from, a truth they can't escape. In that mirror, they see themselves stripped bare, no illusions left to hide behind. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to hope they pay for it, because the deepest reckonings never arrive with noise. They arrive quietly. They arrive when they wake up on a beautiful morning and realize they've lost something they can never get back. A trust, a gaze, a person. They thought you were weak because you were silent, but they didn't know that silence was the loudest declaration, that you've stepped out of the karmic cycle. You don't need to prove anything to them, because they will prove it to you. A soul without roots can never grow again. Spiritual collapse is something no one hears, but it shakes an entire life. If you've ever wondered whether justice exists, remember this. Some verdicts are carried out by the universe in silence, yet they echo forever in the mind of the one who must bear them. You won't see it, but you'll feel it, and that's all you need to finally let go. Then the strangest thing happens at the very end. Not punishment, not regret, but the moment you realize you don't have to do anything at all. That is the sign. The one that once you understand it, causes all resentment to fall away like the last leaf of a long-gone winter. We'll talk about that in the final chapter. Be ready. 7. Sign number 7. You don't have to do anything. When you no longer wish to witness their downfall, no longer crave instant justice, or wait for a late apology, that's when you are truly free. Freedom isn't about being forgiven by someone. It's certainly not about watching them pay. According to Stoicism, freedom is when you are no longer controlled by someone else's emotions. They hurt you. They made you question your own worth. At some point, you might have thought, maybe I just wasn't good enough. But over time, through silence, through long nights facing yourself, you came to realize what they did doesn't define who you are. It only reflects who they are. Stoicism doesn't teach you to strike back. It teaches you to observe, not others, but yourself. Your anger, your pain, your sense of injustice. They're all tests, not to make you stronger than them, but to bring you back to yourself. Steadier, calmer, and more in control. Then you stop waiting. You no longer follow their life from a distance, hoping the universe will give them what they deserve, because you realize karma doesn't need an audience. It doesn't need you to referee. The universe balances itself in its own way, in its own time, slowly but surely. This happens not because you demand it, but because it's a law of nature. When you do nothing, you're not retreating, you're transcending. That's a higher form of strength. It's the peak of maturity. It's the refusal to keep living in an old chapter where you were always the victim waiting for a clean ending. You don't need closure. You don't need someone else to write the final page. You write your own ending with silence, with your steps moving forward, with a life no longer tied to the past. When they return, maybe in a message, a passing glance, or a chance encounter, you feel something different. You don't react. You don't hurt. You don't hope. You smile. Not because you've won, but because you've healed. More importantly, you don't need anything from them anymore. No explanations, no excuses, no validation that you deserved better. We can't control others. We can only control how we respond. When you choose not to react, it's not because you're passive. It's because you're choosing the higher road, the path of inner power, the path of awareness. Sometimes doing nothing is the most powerful choice because it doesn't come from weakness. It comes from clarity. You know who you are. You know what you deserve. You know deep down those who hurt others cannot outrun their own shadow. They will face consequences, not because you wish it, but because it is inevitable. When you no longer need to see them fall to feel at peace, you've truly recovered. When you no longer need them to admit fault to feel worthy, you've truly grown. And when you no longer let them control your emotions, not even through a memory, you've stepped into real freedom. Doing nothing doesn't mean you know nothing. It's the mark of wisdom, the voice of an anchored soul, a silent declaration that, I'm not there anymore, I've moved on. The universe runs in circles. You don't need to redraw karma's path. It knows exactly where to go. While everything spins in its rightful orbit, you just need to keep living lightly, brightly, and without the weight of what once was. In the end, you don't need to do anything at all. Just be who you are, whole, grounded, and free. If you've ever found yourself living in silence, carrying unanswered questions, or holding on to pain no one else seems to understand, remember this. Karma does not exist to punish. Karma exists to teach. You don't have to force anything or seek revenge because life itself has a way of restoring balance. What truly matters is your own silence, your progress, and your inner peace. These are not signs of weakness, but the most powerful lessons others will ever receive from you. The Stoics never taught us to strike back. They taught us to rise above, to grow stronger, to master ourselves, and to build resilience in the face of hardship. Every step you take toward calmness and clarity is a victory. Every moment you choose peace over chaos is a declaration that you refuse to be defined by what was done to you. As you move forward, hold on to this truth. Your growth is the ultimate response, and your peace is the ultimate triumph. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and make sure to stay tuned for the next videos waiting for you right here at the end.